Welcome to Response Able Parenting, the podcast that shows you how to parent in alignment to your emotions, needs, and goals versus your programming, bad advice, and let's face it, outdated strategies that just don't work. You'll get in the trenches support on nervous system and emotional regulation, critical mindset shifts, stronger communication strategies, and more. In this podcast, you'll gain transformational tools that take you from reacting to every frustration to responding with clarity, regulation, and finally setting the example you desire for your kids. I'm Becky Jennings, your new parenting coach, and this is the Response Able Parenting podcast. Let's get into it. Hi, welcome back. I'm so excited to talk to you guys today about compassion and why is it just so much easier to give compassion to other people, and yet instead of giving compassion to ourselves, we beat ourselves up, we go into a shame spiral, we talk about all the ways and why we shouldn't be able to do this for ourselves, right? We do this all the time. It's such a female thing. It's not just a mom thing. I really feel like it's an across the board, a female thing. I was actually reading this great book called Get Rich Lucky Bitch. I mean, it's the catchiest title. It's all about money manifestation and stuff like that, which that's a whole nother topic of worthiness and all of that stuff. But there were several things that she brought up about like women in positions of power, women in positions where they are, kind of running the show for everybody. And it's like, media and stories and nursery rhymes and TV shows and movies and all of this stuff paint pictures of women desperately needing somebody else to validate her worthiness, her existence. If she's this high-powered woman, she is never going to actually achieve happiness until somebody else comes in and sweeps her off her feet, and then she finally finds true love when somebody else gives it to her. Or she, is in the depths of her lowest and somebody else comes, Prince Charming comes and saves her. Or it's the mom who, wants for all of this stuff, but never actually gets it because she's always giving to her children. She's always doing for other people and she's constantly miserable. And it's just like, those are the stories that we have grown up on, that we've been fed endlessly. So when we sit here and we're like, why is it so hard for me to give compassion to myself? Why is it so hard for me to sit in my feelings and actually take time? It's because we have actually been trained and programmed and told that we do not need to do that. That we just need to be focused on other people. We need to be giving. We need to be providing. We need to be that all things for others. And so when we have a feeling, and I shared this last summer because I was maybe it was 2 summers ago at this point, but we always go back east and we spend the summer with my in-laws, and it's challenging in its own ways. We've gotten so much better, and I can talk about that on another podcast. That's a whole other podcast in and of itself. But essentially it was really apparent that the default caregiver, i.e. myself, is not allowed to be inconvenient because everybody else is relying on us, the ecosystem of the house, the happiness level of everybody. It's completely dependent on us, our availability, our emotional capacity. And so it was just a slap in the face to me to be like, oh, I'm not allowed to be inconvenient. I'm not allowed to not be in forward motion all the time because so many people are relying on my capabilities. And that just goes back to everything that we have been fed, everything that we have been programmed to believe is that it's not a worthwhile investment of our time to sit with our emotions, to uncover why we feel the way we feel. It's just inconvenient, and the train's going to keep a rolling, and ain't nobody got time for that. So we constantly suppress our inconvenient feelings for the sake of the household, for the sake of forward movement, even though ultimately we're sabotaging that forward movement because we're resentful, We aren't fully engaged in it. We're not being present in the moment. We're forward thinking about all the things that we have to do. It's actually more detrimental to not sit with our feelings than it is to allow those feelings. Now, I've talked about this before, but compassion, when we break down the word of compassion, it means to sit with the feelings that are overwhelming, the feelings that are too big, almost unbearable. Like the weight of them is just so much that it feels like we can't handle it. But that's compassion, is to just be with it without fixing it, to just sit, to be with that. And so something that I have been doing for myself, this is kind of like a self practice, and I'm going to test it for the summer. We're heading into another summer with another summer of in-laws. So I'm going to test this all summer long when I have an inconvenient feeling that pops up. And what I am going to test and try out and see is, what is my pattern of suppression? What is my pattern of distraction? What do I do to busy myself instead of sitting with the emotions? That's why it's easier to give to others, to sit with other people's feelings, because we can provide for them. We're still in service. But when we do it for ourselves, it's really painful. It's really challenging because it brings up a slew of self-limiting beliefs. Our worthiness meter is on full display, and that can be really, really challenging. It's really hard to sit and say, what do I need right now? What is an unmet need of mine that I'm experiencing? Is this chronic? Is this need never met? Is this something I even feel comfortable asking to be met? Then another question, my God, how dare we even ask, how would it look like to feel loved right now? To feel loved? Holy cow. Not loved because of all the things that you do and accomplish for others, but loved because of you, your authenticity, just your being. And I think that's really hard because it puts our triggers on blast. But honestly, the only way we actually start to heal the inner workings of our bodies, so that we're not super reactive, so that we're not taking everything personally, so that we're not constantly putting ourselves in the position of being the martyr, the cog in the wheel, the glue that holds it all together, to release some of that. Because I know for a very, very, very long time, I was doing for everybody so that they needed me. And when they needed me, I felt like I was of value. Now, that's a shitty place to be. That's a crap place to parent from, because then when you're doing for everybody and then you're getting resistance, and then you're getting like nasty comments, and then you're not getting appreciated, holy cow, that is a dangerous zone, because that is filled with tons of resentment. And then, as opposed to sitting with the uncomfortable feeling, we just suppress that and then just wait for that one particular phase in our cycle, and it all comes spilling out. So, what would it look like to give yourself compassion, as opposed to constantly outward seeking that validation, that just acceptance of your position, right? Your acceptance of your efforts, and looking to others to fuel your worthiness meter? What if, when we start to feel a little uncomfortable, a little angry, a little resentful, when we're triggered by something, when we feel that discomfort, which is our nervous system telling us, hey, I don't like this. Anger is simply saying, I don't like what's going on here. Something needs to change, right? But as opposed to feeling anger, because we shouldn't feel anger, right? Shouldn't feel anger. When we feel angry, we just suppress that. We tight lip. We just say, I'm fine. I'm fine, right? We do that all the time, as opposed to sitting and kind of uncovering, why do I feel the way we feel? Why do I feel so angry? What about this moment caused me to feel this way? Is it attached to a previous event in my life? Is it a recurring pattern that I constantly find myself in? So this neural pathway is really strong and it's really, tapping in on that sore spot, right? And then let's start to see, how do we distract ourselves from discomfort, from giving ourselves compassion? Do we find ourselves endlessly scrolling? Do we find ourselves hopping on? This was a huge one. I found myself anytime I'd get really angry, I would like immediately go scan to like online shop. I wouldn't buy anything. I would just go and be like, I'm going to go shopping, right? But I couldn't leave the house because I had kids. And so I'd like randomly be on clothing websites, even though like I had no intention to buy, but it was distracting myself from my anger, from my discomfort. Where if I had just sat down and that been like, Becky, what is this anger telling you? Where can this lead you to? Because the beautiful thing about feelings is they're basically neon signs alerting you to the direction that you need to go to heal. It's like, you're angry. Why am I angry? Because so and so did this to me when I was 13 and I just suppressed that feeling, and my child is doing something so similar right now and I never healed from that. So it's amplified in the moment right now and I'm so angry at my kid, but actually what he's doing is completely developmentally normal. However, I never understood that and I always took it personally, and I looked at it as a reflection of my value, and on we go, and we start to peel back these layers where it all comes back to our worthiness. It all comes back to being loved, to having needs met. And our behavior, the outward expression of these unmet or met needs, is our distractions, is how we you know, try to move away from the discomfort, our reactivity. All of our behavior is alerting us to areas that we need to continue to grow and heal. All of it. It's 2025 and there is more parenting advice than ever before. Yet we're still confused, stuck, and defaulting back to the way our parents raised us in the 80s and 90s. Parenting has evolved since then, and it's time your strategies do too. Welcome to the Responsible Parenting community. This is where you get the support you're looking for so you can make fast, positive, and long-term change in your household. Inside my community, you get access to my signature course, S.T.U.C.K, your emotional regulation roadmap to raising ADHD and strong-willed kids. You have my Fast Way to Regulate challenge, giving you 30 days of nervous system work to completely rewire how you react to the stress of parenting. On top of that, you have weekly opportunities to connect with me and get personalized support on issues that challenged you that week. You also have quarterly workshops, bite-sized mini lessons to keep you motivated, and everything I add for as long as you're a member. This is your place to filter out all the noise and get practical strategies that work. Join the community today and start feeling relief as early as tonight. And yet, we choose actively on a daily basis to not sit with our own, but to sit with others and allow for others to have their feelings, allow to others to have their meltdowns. Like, I want to have a meltdown in the middle of a supermarket. I would love that. But I don't. Right? This is some of the stuff that I talk about in my program, Stuck to Strong, is being able to uncover what is really going on underneath the behavior. Because once we start to understand that, we don't have to take the behavior so personally. Once we understand the root, then we can actually tackle the root and create systems, and we can heal and we can get support and we have deeper clarity. We can create what experts call a cohesive narrative, where we actually understand what happened in the past. We actually can bring in more context, have more clarity, and we can kind of heal that zone and leave it in that zone versus consistently bringing in like little web pieces of that into every present moment, keeping us more stuck, keeping us more resentful, and just not allowing ourselves to enjoy any of the present moment. So I challenge you this week to start to notice your patterns, start to try to be like uncover the patterns that start to happen when you feel discomfort. Right? Remember, compassion is to sit with the very uncomfortable feelings that seem unbearable, overwhelming to the point where you feel like you have to run away from that. But being really good at self compassion is sitting with those feelings, listening to what those feelings are trying to teach you and to show you and to draw you into so that you can actually address the root of it versus constantly stay in the pattern of that surface level stuff. And we get down below, we get into the nitty gritty of it. We can actually heal the root so that what is blooming on top is actually what you want to see, the behavior you want to see. Because when the roots, I don't want to say spoiled, but when the roots have rot, I guess that's a good way of saying it, you're going to have gross fruit. You're going to have negative behavior. You're going to have resentment. You're going to have all this stuff as the presenting flowers, as the presenting leaves. But when we go back in and we nourish the soil and we tend to the weeds and we clear out the fungus and we clear out all of that stuff and we put in, beautiful fertilizer and we put in worms and we do all this stuff, then of course the garden looks incredible. I've really gone on a tangent here. I hope you're still with me. But that happens internally too. Like we can have root rot in our emotions. We can be stuck. And that is what I do all the time in S.T.R.O.N.G is I help you really uncover your personal patterns, your personal ways of dealing with discomfort. And I help you really sit with those moments and I help you really learn how to process it, how to heal it, and then how to move forward in a more compassionate way to yourself so that you can be more compassionate in the moment, so that you can handle things in the moment. Because with our children, we truly need to be their external for a very long time before their internal understands what's going on. We're basically a guide, so to speak, but think of it as like we're kind of their external world, keeping them safe, helping them learn systems, helping them understand the process of things, the order of things, why we do the things we do, until it becomes ingrained and natural for them, and that becomes their natural order. But we have to be the external for their internal for a very long time. But it's really hard to be somebody's external and hoping to build a beautiful internal when our internal is haywire, when we're constantly stressed, when we are a hotbed of resentment and frustration. So it is essential for parenting to heal the internal so that we can be that external for everybody else in a positive way, right? So lots to think about this week, and I would love to hear like what you uncovered as your go-to distraction, what you uncovered when you were feeling like all sorts of frustration. What did you do? What was your go-to? Was it scrolling? Was it eating? Was it yelling? Was it, shopping? What was it for you that you automatically reached for when you felt discomfort? I can't wait to hear, and let's continue this conversation. See you next week. Thank you for listening to the Responsible Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share this episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough, you are capable, you've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together. This podcast was produced by Kim Kelty and myself, Becky Jennings, and edited by the Kelty Method, Branding and Podcasting.